You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and we have another show lineup for you all today. Today, we have a special guest, Jay Campbell. I mean, he has a resume that probably take me 30 days and nights to go through, but I'm going to get right to the point, cut to the chase. Here's all you need to know. He is a pioneer who's helping thousands of people break free from the broken, sick care system. And he is helping, taking care of their best health, giving them full control of their health. We know that that is a buzzword. You know, everyone wants to be in control of their health. They want to not get into the traditional things, and they want to be more innovative things. Well, this guy, Jay, he has a website, jcampbell.com. And he is a 5-time best-selling international author. He's a former men's physique champion. He is a co-founder of BioLongevity Labs. And I'm about to run out of breath because I told you he has so much on his resume. He is widely recognized as one of the world's leading experts in hormonal optimization, therapeutic peptides, and biohacking for longevity and peak performance. So before the show ends, I have to bring Jay to the show and say, hey, man, how you doing? Welcome to the show, man.
Jeremiah, it's awesome to be here, man. I really, truly appreciate, and I'm humbly privileged to be here because I love chopping it up with people who get it, and clearly you are a dude that does. So let's make this a magical event.
It's already magical because I didn't get to 1% of your resume, and it's already almost 5 minutes. So all jokes aside, kind of take us back to the beginning. What was the pivotal moment when you realized traditional medical system wasn't really helping as much as it could? And how did that lead you into peptides and hormone therapy?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I usually tell the story of like how I got into this, but the pivotal moment is a better question because I was actually recently asked something very similar, which is weird because nobody's ever asked that first question. And now you asked something very similar, but I think it was actually in probably 4 years after I had started therapeutic testosterone. And I started to realize I was like 6 months into using therapeutic peptides. And by the way, for the record, for the audience, this is in 2003. So I started using therapeutic hormones, testosterone, in 1999. I was 1 month from turning, or 1 month and a half from turning 30. And I got kicked in the testicles at playing in an adult men's basketball league. And so fast forward, I met an endocrinologist I was referred to an endocrinologist, and he got me on therapeutic hormones. And my life transformed. But 4 years into that and doing the research and reading and just becoming this voracious consumer of information. And again, remember, this is back in 2003. So the internet was in its infancy. And at the time, the internet was mostly signal and very little noise, which, as you know, Shamaya, now it's the opposite, right? It's very difficult for people to get clear channel information today. But, in that time of like studying and reading and being in these like anonymous news groups and anonymous forums, with handles and learning from other smart people who are crowdsourcing their data, I just had this epiphany of like, you know what, man, if I start all this information that I'm learning, there's nobody out here talking about it. There's no formal data sets. There's no books. There's nothing. So it's like I actually had the opportunity to really collect this data, experiment on myself, talk to other people also experimenting on themselves, take notes, take accurate records or keep accurate records. And at some point I can do something with this. And so that was really in 2003. And it wasn't until 2014 that I finally had the balls to write a book about this. Because again, I'm not a medically trained or licensed professional. And so I was always really kind of concerned, like, how would society look at me as a non-medically trained person without a license to write books on those stuff that I did. And so, I consulted later, obviously, attorneys and people and smart people. And I also created a white paper before I wrote my first book. And I sent it to what I thought were like the world's most distinguished people in this space. And one of the guys was a guy by the name of Nelson Bergel. Shout out to Nelson. But he had written a book called Built to Survive. And it was a book for men who had HIV. And back then, the HIV diagnosis was a death sentence, right? They didn't understand about viral drugs and all these things that could keep people alive. So like he wrote the book on teaching people like how I could use these things to survive. I have a death sentence with HIV. So he read my white paper, but didn't respond to me for like 6 months. And eventually, because he's from Venezuela and he was back in his native country because it was a war-torn place. This is back in 2014. And when he finally wrote me back, he sent me an email on Gmail and he was like, I don't know who you are, but he's like, this is sensational. I need to get your cell phone number. We need to talk because you need to put this information into the world. So that at that point, and then to here right now, 12 years later, I've written a number of books. I've lectured all over the world. As you said, I've been writing now about peptides. A lot of people look at me as like one of the biggest subject matter experts on peptides. And it's been a blessing. I mean, really, it's been just a whirlwind the last 12 years to be able to talk to people like yourself and physicians and researchers and scientists. And now, obviously, I built my company, which is BioLongevity Labs, which you mentioned almost a year and a half ago. It was actually in October of 2024. So that's been in this space and it's exploded. People call it the Amazon of biohacking now because we have 96 different products. All the top peptides, all the top bioregulators, all the top small molecules, and we are iterating and creating faster than anyone else in the industry. And I'm blessed. I have amazing people, a couple of partners in my business, and then I have an incredible director, a chief science officer, and some chemists that also work with us. And so we're just really in this blessed time. And I think excuse me, and your audience will for surely know that peptides is like the buzzword right now. Like everybody's talking about peptides. It doesn't matter what space you're in, pro athletes, celebrities, news anchors, people in the mainstream talk about GLPs. I just wrote my book on GLPs, Metabolic Awakening, with GLPs that came out in February. And it's such a successful book that dude down here in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, which is where I'm at right now with my wife, partially business, partially vacation. I mean, I'm giving away copies of the book to doctors here in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, right? So it's like, I'm blessed, man. I'm in a really amazing space right now. And also, I'm in the right place at the right time. But I know for a fact that I put in a lot of work to get to this spot right now. And I think that nothing in life that's worth having or worth attaining or achieving comes without massive amounts of, action. And so I took action, back when I had zero, internet fame, nobody knew who I was. Before I wrote my first book, I was learning and I was studying and I was putting in the work. And so I always tell people, because young people today are very impressionable and they see things or see people like me and they want to be there. And I say, you're not going to get here until you put the work in. So there's no overnight flashes in the pan. Anybody who thinks that happens is full of crap. And one of the things I think I've learned about money and just call it material things is the amount of money, because as you know, money is currency. It's energetic currency. The amount of money that you earn in life is completely commensurate with the amount of people you serve. And so if you win a lottery, what's going to happen, right? You're going to lose that money because you don't serve enough people that's equal to all that money that you were given in that chance lucky thing of winning the lottery. So as you go through life, you will realize that you earn completely relative to how many people you serve in life. So if you are a person listening to this right now and you want to make more money or you want to, serve more people, you gotta get out there and you got to do something that has the ability to scale your knowledge or scale your content or scale your creative abilities to lots of people. And that's how you do it. And so that's taken me a long time in my life. I'm 55 years old now, but I know that holds true for every single profession, every single content creator, any professional celebrity, athlete, etc. You have to serve a lot of people in order to, again, create, energetic currency just to equate to that level.
Appreciate you saying that because we know people who lift weights and we know people who watch people lift weights. It's a big difference. And I appreciate you saying that. And by the way, for our viewers and listeners, if they're related to Patrick and they don't know what in the world is peptides, let's go into some peptides 101. What in the world are these things? And why are they such game changers for health, performance, and reversing aspects of aging?
Yeah, man, great question. So peptides in the basic way that a person in, 8th grade biology would understand are just chains of amino acids. And the longer the chain, the longer or more complex the molecular structure, the more likely you probably have to inject it into your body. And when people hear the word injection, they freak out, I have needle phobia. I don't want to inject myself. But, when you're using a peptide, it's an aqueous or water-based solution. It can go through a tiny 2 micron needle, which literally you could stab yourself in the eyeball and not feel. So lots of people in the aesthetic world, cosmetic surgery, estheticians, people that do microneedling. I mean, they're using peptides all the time with those tiny little needles, and they're injecting them into their face and the jawline and around here to improve collagen synthesis. So the truth about peptides is they're chains of amino acids. They're biological or bioorganic signaling molecules, so they're naturally found in the human body. And the main reason why they're so great and so many people are flocking to using them now is because they actually do, Jeremiah, treat the underlying root cause of disease, sickness, illness, poor health. Whereas the allopathic, I call them Rockefeller medicines, those things are made of petroleum distillate. So when your mom or grandparents or, somebody is taking all those color-coded pills, they're taking pills to medicate themselves from the symptoms of the side effects from all the different pills they take. Whereas with peptides, there really are very few side effects, especially if you know how to use them correctly, you know how to use microdoses, et cetera. But because they're organic and they're found naturally in the human body, they really don't break down into anything that's harmful. Whereas, again, allopathic medicines are petroleum distillate. And when they break down, they break out into residue, and the residue causes symptoms and side effects, and they're just really nasty. So that's why there's this giant, mad rush into peptides, because people see them as almost foundational molecules that can completely reverse whatever it is that ails them. And, you talked about aging. I mean, there's lots of peptides that are lowering biological age. So if you take them, you will literally cellularly become younger than you were than the day before you took them. So there's lots of people in their 60s and 70s that are taking, call them anti-aging or longevity peptides, because they absolutely do make them younger cellularly, which is obviously very important as you get older. Excuse me.
Once again, listen, I Refocus Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest today, Jay Campbell. Go to his website, jcampbell.com. My next question has to deal with the healthcare system. You have famously kind of taken apart and say, hey, the sick care system is something that we all get tired of. I mean, I just had a doctor's appointment earlier today, but I love my doctor. Shout out to my doctor. I don't think he want me to say his name, so I won't say his name without his permission, but he's really on it about preventable health, being on top of it, doing what you need to do. The whole organic wave is being very felt now, if I can say it in that way, because so many people are talking about it. And not just that, so many doctors are embracing, you know what, this sick care system is not helping. It's really hurting not just people that we take care of, but it's also putting a lot of stress in the system. And there's a lot of people who are stressed out already with life. And you just look at gas prices, that's another way to get you going crazy. But for you, what are some of the biggest ways that we can see a better way of dealing with the system than what we currently are dealing with? Yeah.
So I think it's a good question. First off, it's a mindset, because people have to start realizing, I have a saying, and I'll just say it right now because it's perfectly apropos, but you have to become the proactive scientist of your own health. Because your doctor, no matter how cool he is, he's not going through your medical records on a monthly, weekly, yearly basis to see, how he can help you. Because that's not what they're paid to do. They're paid to diagnose and treat symptoms of sickness, illness, disease, dysregulation. So if you really truly want to step outside the paradigm of healthcare, which is, again, sick care or illness medicine, you have to become fully accountable, personally responsible for everything, right? So what does that mean? That means that, you have to dial in your diet. You have to live insulin controlled, which is regulate your carbohydrate consumption to the amount of activity you have in your life, right? Bodybuilder can eat more carbs than a person who's sedentary, right? A triathlete or an Ironman competitor can eat more fat than a person that isn't that. So it's, again, you have to understand your body's energetic demand, your body's caloric requirements on how much you give out or don't do in the course of a day, and then you eat relative to that. And what that's actually called is metabolic flexibility. You don't have to live in a crazy, carnivore or ketogenic diet or any of those things. You just have to remain metabolically flexible, and you need to give your body fuel based on the energy that you're putting out, on a day in, day out basis. Like I said, whether you're a triathlete or a bodybuilder or just a, general old sedentary, housewife or house dad, you have to figure out how much energy you're putting into the universe every single day and then eat relative to that. So that's number one. The second thing, and probably the biggest thing, is, especially for aging people, and I say aging people, I mean 35 and up. Do you have a hormone deficiency? Because almost everyone in American society and Western society, global society now today, who lives in major population centers or urban areas, as you know, is being hammered, dude. The air that we breathe, the food that we eat, the water we drink, the chemicals around us, the blue light right now that we're dealing with on these screens. I mean, all of these things are designed to lower and imbalance our, central nervous system, our endocrine system, everything that plays, it's all kind of interlocked and stuff, and it's all a symphony. And as soon as it gets out of order, that's what leads to disease and sickness. And so if you can optimize your hormones, or even better yet, balance and optimize your hormones as you're getting older, you're never going to get sick. I tell this to people all the time. People like my wife and I'm 55, she's 54. We have the bodies of people in our early 20s. My wife looks better than almost any girl in a bikini at 22, including fitness models, and she's 54. But our lifestyle is very conducive to looking like that, right? Like, we don't drink alcohol. Obviously, we don't smoke cigarettes or vape, or, we eat very religiously clean. I mean, we obviously, when we're traveling and stuff, we eat kind of, whatever we want, but, it's in moderation. And then obviously we have a mastery of chemicals. We have a mastery of peptides. We have a mastery of hormones. So, like, if you understand all those things while you're attempting to live this life, you can absolutely maximize your physical vessel and live a really, really long time, because statistically it's proven the longer you live is according to how lean your body is. Like, all the blue zone 100-year-old plus people have no body fat. They have no levels of inflammation. Like they always say that there's no fat people in senior citizens' homes, right? Because they are inflamed. And they have very high inflammatory markers that basically say you're going to die a lot earlier than the person who has less body fat and less inflammation. So, like, if you understand those kind of things, diet, I didn't say exercise, but clearly you have to do exercise. You have to, do a combination of weight training, cardiovascular training. And then, of course, know if you're hormonally deficient. And so many people are. And, if you are hormonally deficient, you can obviously, change your lifestyle to live cleaner, more holistic, et cetera. But most people, especially in the big cities, the biggest tool in the tool belt is therapeutic hormones, right? And you can modulate your hormones through therapeutic testosterone. You can modulate them through therapeutic peptides, sometimes a combination of both. But so once you have that education, you understand that you do have a hormone deficiency, then it's seeking to balance and optimize your hormones. Then after that, man, like, everything else is just gravy, because when you're hormonally optimized, you're not going to get sick. And you can start using peptides, or you can start using, growth hormones or GH agonist peptides or things like that to actually really optimize your health, make you leaner, make you have more energy, make you feel more focused, just make you feel better versus somebody who isn't. Because, I always say this, and this is important. If you're functioning with a hormone deficiency and you're a 40-year-old guy, a 35-year-old woman, a 50-year-old man or woman, and you have a hormone deficiency, you start taking peptides, you're not going to feel shit. Right? Because your body is not dialed in and is not able or capable of functioning at a much higher level, because everything is kind of broken down. The machinery of the body is not functioning where you want it to function. So the more you optimize your hormones, the more you optimize the biological systems, the faster using peptides, GLPs, small molecules, bioregulators, all these amazing biochemical agents that are available to you now will affect you and make you whatever it is you desire, which might be smarter, leaner, stronger, more muscular, better energy, better sexual function, etc. All those things can happen, but you got to dial in the foundational precepts first. And I think that's where most people err when they get into this space. It's like they don't have any of the foundations at all. And they think using peptides are going to be like a magic bullet. And Shemaiah, doesn't work that way. And I mean, I know you know that, but a lot of people don't, unfortunately.
And to your point, you were talking about lifestyle. I think that's very important to talk about and address, because we have people thinking that there's a magic pill or magic click your heels 3 times, and before you know it, poof, I'm a whole new person. But that's not how it is. But this is a next question I have for you, and that is, we are hearing a lot of things being talked about with GLP-1 and metabolic health. Yeah. From your lens, what are some of the things that people misunderstand about these two things? And also, what is it about these things that are helping people who are struggling with the traditional route?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. So obviously I just wrote this book, Metabolic Awakening with GLP Peptides. It's 730 pages. It's almost 1,300 scientific references and citations. It literally took 8 months to write the book, my copywriters and myself. And, my super proud claim to fame about that book is I did not use AI. And neither did my copywriters. There's zero AI involved, right? So it was deep thinking, deep research. But that's a great question because here's the truth, 95% of people who use GLP-1 peptides, which as you know are appetite suppression, insulin upregulating, metabolism upregulating. They do a lot of good things for people, but 95% of people do it wrong because they don't understand the dosing strategy. They don't understand the lifestyle strategy. They really do think it's a magic bullet that their doctor gives them that they can just start injecting and it suppresses their appetite. And now all they have to think they do is just not eat and, go 3 days without food or a week without food. Bro, I've heard it all. I've seen it all. And so when you do that, you obviously face what I call metabolic hell or metabolic haywire mode. And you have muscle loss, you have thyroid damage, your hair falls out. Everything that you hear about in the mainstream about the side effects that these drugs cause happens. And so what my goal is with writing this book, and obviously there's lots of other people like me, doctors, etc., is our focus has to be on the education component. Like we have to teach people that these are amazing tools and they can do so many great things for their health. But if they don't know how to use them, and I'll get to that in a second, they're horrible. They're going to cause nothing but negative side effects, problems, just all sorts of bad things that you can imagine can go wrong. And so the answer on how to use these correctly is to microdose them. But very few doctors, clinicians, progressive people, functional medicine people, they don't understand because at the end of the day, bro, it's like they got bills and issues too. They got to pay their bills. They got, mortgages, college tuitions, etc. And so like if the pharmaceutical rep comes in, with her big boobs and tiny waist and, wearing a tight dress and she says, hey, you need to start subscribing Wegovy or Mounjaro and you got to give them 4 milligrams or 6 milligrams or 8 milligrams a week. That's what the doctor's going to do. And so the doctor gives them these super high dosages, which are designed for like morbidly obese, insulin deranged, metabolically deranged people. And then, dude, within 4 weeks, they're a mess. Their hair's falling out. They stopped eating. They're not getting enough protein. They're obviously not motivated. They have low energy. They can't exercise, etc. All these negative things happen. And so you see all these negative side effects and you hear about all this up in the mainstream news, but nobody who uses these correctly from the beginning they start or the start of their therapy. And again, start doing it correctly is a microdose. And when I say a microdose, I mean a microdose. Like literally, talk about tirzepatide, which is Zepbound or Mounjaro. You're going to use like 0.25 to 0.4 milligrams. And they're recommending on the package insert and the pharma reps, they're recommending 10 to 15 to 20 times that starting dose. So you can imagine if you start off with these high dosages, and again, do this 95% of people who use them, it's only going to end poorly. So you, as the end user, the patient, the consumer, you really have to do your due diligence and you have to educate yourself. And whether you get that information from me or somebody else that, is putting out information, hopefully good, because as you know, bro, there's so much bad information out there. I mean, the signal to noise ratio on the internet is mostly noise now, but as long as you're getting your information from a good person, a good source, and you realize that microdosing is the way with GLPs, you're not going to have any side effects. Now, again, you have to live the lifestyle. You have to train. You have to exercise. You have to live insulin controlled. You got to get enough protein. Hopefully, you're hormonally balanced and optimized. But if you do all those things, and you can, and anyone can, and then you take a GLP at a microdose, it's a game changer. It's going to lower your body fat. It's going to get rid of inflammation. It's going to change brainwave patterning. I mean, dude, they cure alcoholism. They cure weed addiction. They cure vape addictions. These things are amazing drugs. There's so much peer review and sicientific evidence that proves all that's true. But again, remember Tim Ferriss said the difference between a pill and a poison is the dosage. So if we're going to use a GLP, we have to understand the dosing strategy, whether we're a male or female, depending on our body weight, depending on our experience, etc., depending on if we're hormonally optimized. If you're accounting for all those things and you use these tools, they're the greatest tools in the history of pharmaceutical science. But how can that be true? And at the same time, 95% of people are using them incorrectly. And again, it's just purely an educational breakdown in the marketplace. The doctors don't know. The pharmaceutical reps don't want them to know. So it takes a very progressive physician, a very progressive clinician, a very progressive influencer, subject matter expert like myself to really weed through the data and really truthfully come out with an interpretation of like, how do we use these? And again, all the studies that are using low dosages, microdoses, as I always say, start low, go slow, they never fail. They always show that the people that use that, and they started that frequency or that level, hold on to the fat loss, can come off the product, no issues, don't have cold turkey syndrome or anything like that. So it's like, we know how to use these things. It's just getting the information to the masses so that they can learn to do it too, because very few of them know.
Once again, listen to Refocus Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Jay Campbell. Go to his website, jcampbell.com. And in Radio World, we are flat out of time, man. I have to get you back on, but I have one more question. So this will be a bonus for the podcast. So the podcast will be a little longer. When you think about how people try to raise consciousness, you emphasize that true optimization isn't just physical, it's also mental and spiritual. Yeah, I think this will kind of bring this all full circle. How does raising your consciousness help not just play a role in achieving the total health, but also gaining better wellness?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, man. And that's my jam now, is teaching people the importance of it. So look, man, like you can't, I guess the best way to say it is that, when you really understand who we are as human beings in these physical vessels, in these what I call meat suits, one of my mentors used to call them meat modems because we're obviously programmed. You realize that you're so much more than this physical material shell, right? Like you really are vibrating atoms and oscillating waves of spiritual energy. That's what we really are at base essence. And when you understand that you're just an energetic construct in a physical body here in third density, if you realize that, you start thinking like, okay, well, wait a minute. Like if I'm just energy, how do I make not only my energy more vibrant and more attractive, but, how do I attract to other people? And, I can go really deep on this from a quantum, entanglement standpoint, but I think most people that listen to this, understand the law of attraction, right? And again, it's also the law of resonance. And again, like attracts like, we get out of life what we put into it. Our thoughts become things. Those are very, very true statements. And if you choose every single day of your life to raise your frequency, to raise your vibration, to raise your consciousness, you will attract others of the exact same time. And the more people of like mind, of a higher frequency, a higher vibration that you bring into your circle, the better the world and reality around you is, because again, energy cannot be contracted, destroyed, or gotten rid of. It just continually, infinitely expands. So if you're infinitely expanding your high vibration frequency or your high vibration energy, which is high consciousness, not only are you putting it out into the universe, you're attracting others who are doing the same thing. So the more people that you attract with a higher vibration, a higher frequency, what I say, a higher resonance, the more of that energy you put into the universe and the more good you ultimately do. Because again, energy begets energy, resonance begets resonance. If you're putting out a high frequency, a high vibration, that's all you're going to attract. And obviously, if you're attracting that and you're putting that out, you're creating a bubble, call it a consciousness bubble, that's openly expanding and attracting more and more of the same. So the easiest way to summarize that is like every single day you have a choice when you wake up in the morning. You can have a mindset of abundance or you can have a mindset of lack. And if your mindset is of abundance, you are completely open to anything and everything. You're accepting and allowing all things into your field. If your mindset is lack, you're in resistance. You're blocking the opportunity to achieve abundance, to achieve prosperity, to achieve, again, all of those things that are constantly available and around us in the universe. So if you change your mindset and you change your thoughts, you can completely change your life. And it doesn't take a lot of work. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It does take action once you change your mindset from a victimhood, say, mindset to abundance mindset. But it's very simple to change your thoughts. And once you change your thoughts, dude, you can change your frequency.
It's funny you said that, because now I just say something to add to what you're saying. That is, I heard someone say, you either feed your faith or you feed your fear, because both of them are hungry. And the one that gets fed the most becomes the beast.
That's
and
awesome.
It's like what you're saying right here is just like a different way of saying what I just said.
That's literally
it's very
way better
apparent.
said than what I said it, but that's exactly right, man. You're right. Your consciousness is a stream of energy, and you can either be limiting or you can be open. You can be open, abundant, prosperous, or you can be lack, limitation, and scarcity. Choose your frequency, but make sure that if you want the best and the most that the universe has to offer, you have to be open. You cannot be blocking it. A lot of people are in resistance. I have a statement that says this. It says, all is happening divinely as it is intended, always and in all ways. Our resistance to this awareness is futile. And that's the absolute fact of the universe. I don't care who you are, what you're doing, what you've accomplished in your life. If you are open to the reality that everything is happening divinely as it's intended, as God, source, creation, universe intends it, then if you think against it, it's your resistance. It's no one else's, it's yours. So just drop your resistance and be open to anything happening. And I promise you, your life will become abundant.
Well, on that note, the oven is already been hot, but the cake is perfectly cooked. I don't want to take nothing away or add anything else. What was said was perfect, and I think I'll just leave it there and probably have your team maybe come back on the show, because I feel like we just kind of sprinkle a little teaser, if you will.
Bro, I'd love to come back on your show, man. You have great, calm, very, very, very purposeful energy. And when I get around people like you, it's what we just talked about is what's happening. Your vibration is attuning to my vibration, and we just created poetry. And so the next time it'll even be better. So yeah, I'll be happy to, man. Make sure that they reach out to my people. Your people reach out to my people. But no, for sure, I'd love to come out, man. It'd be epic.
Well, once again, then this time Refocus Radio and watching us live. Make sure you go to our guest website, jcampbell.com. Man, I'm telling you, it's so good. I gotta leave it there. You know how you have some really good pizza, and it's like, man, I don't want to get overstuffed. I'm gonna put it in the fridge, and I'm gonna anticipate for it later. That's what I'm gonna do with you guys. I'm gonna put the pizza in the fridge. We're gonna hopefully get with his team and get him back on the show in the future. Because you're right, when you have good energy, it's almost like having two great basketball players on the court. And right now, San Antonio is kind of hot right now. Spurs is like having, Wemby getting alley-oop with his teammate. You know what I'm saying? Like, someone got to throw it, right? So there you go. I'll leave it at there real quick. If you have anything that people can tap into, any recent books or any events or anything you have coming up, what's the best way that they can stay in touch online?
Yeah, so for sure, obviously go to the website, jcampbell.com. That's where most of the free information is. But I also have a vanity domain that we use for website or for podcasts like yours. And it's jcampbell.com/free-info. On that page, you can get access to every single book I've ever written, which are now 9. The newest book, the PDF, is not up there yet. They're probably not going to have it up there until probably the end of May, because it just launched in the end of February. So it's usually 3 months we give it. But I always give away all my stuff for free. And listen, if you're watching this show and you want to get my book because you really want to change your physical existence, and you really want to obviously then optimize your spiritual and mindset, just send me an email. You can send an email to my team at contact@jcampbell.com, and I'll send you the PDF of the book. It really is that good. It really is a life-changing book, but you obviously have to take action. So, Jeremiah, man, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for letting me be on the show today. It was epic. And like I said, you have amazing energy, so I'll be on this anytime you ask me.
Like always, Jay, thank you for your time.